Welcome to the Mercedes Wilson Show. Racism is defined as a prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against someone of a different race based on the belief that one's own race is superior. Why is it present in the church? Let's talk.
You're amazing. There'll never be another like you. Never be another like you. Captivating and sharing the things that really matter to you. Really matter to you. When the weight of the world gets too heavy, take a ride with Mercedes. Be in the know on the Mercedes Wilson Show. Sharing the things that really Mercedes Wilson Show.
Welcome to the Mercedes Wilson Show. I have two special guests on my show today that are very passionate about the topic that we are talking about today, and they address it in church on a regular basis. Pastor Brek is senior pastor at Renovation, and Elder Kimera Lattimore is the worship director at Renovation as well. Welcome.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm excited y'all are here. Are
We're
y'all ready
excited
for
to
this?
be here. Absolutely.
Yeah?
I think so.
I think you are too,
Yeah.
Pastor. I think you are too. Kimera,
Yes.
Elder Kimera, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, tell you a little bit of. I mean, how much time do we have?
Oh God, 30 seconds. No.
No. I love God with everything in me. I try to live that through my passion and how I live my life. Right now, I serve as the music director at Renovation Church, where this is my pastor. And so today is exciting for me because we get to address a lot of the things that we look at every Sunday.
Yep.
And we live through every Sunday,
Yeah.
kind of conquer every
Right,
Sunday. So I'm
right.
excited about that.
That's good. Pastor Brek, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I am a relocator from the Midwest. I'm a Kansas City born and raised guy, and we moved into Buffalo, New York in the region back in 2001, and love Buffalo. This is now what we call home. Got 3 kids, an incredible wife, and I have the privilege to be able to pastor and help serve an incredible community of faith called Renovation Church in Northwest Buffalo, in kind of the area of Black Rock, West Turtle, and Riverside area. And so that's where we are, and we've been on this journey of what does it look like to be a multi-ethnic, multi-generational community of faith in the city of Buffalo, which is, last time I heard, the 6th most segregated city in America. And how do we navigate that in those waters? And so that's a little bit about where we are presently. And I would just simply say, I would not have believed that I would be sitting in this chair talking about this probably 10, 12 years ago, because it really wasn't on my radar screen. And so I just kind of have to, before we start talking about this, I'm a white dude on a journey that has tried to really understand what I did not know 10, 12 years ago, and I'm still learning. Every single week I have aha moments, but it's nothing, it's by the grace of God that I'm sitting here, and then I get to be on this journey, get to be side by side with Elder Kimera, and she has taught me so much along the way, as so many others in our community of faith have.
Yeah. So I'm excited to talk about this. I'm ready to dig in. So one of the famous quotes of Dr. Martin Luther King was, and he said it in 1963, "It's appalling that the most segregated hour of Christian America is 11 o'clock on Sunday morning." And today, that can still ring true in our country. And there are folks of the faith, like you and I, that honestly believe that racism is okay and that the Bible justifies it. So I would love to start with you, Pastor, on every Sunday. What goes through your mind, knowing the climate of our country, when you stand up to give a sermon and you know where we are? What's going through your mind?
Yeah. Well, it's a good question, and that's a great quote. I've had to read a lot. I've had to kind of put myself in some spaces. I had several years ago, somebody suggested to me, hey, if you're going to be planning a church, starting a church in an under-resourced community, diverse community, then you ought to get hooked up with this association called CCDA, Christian Community Development Association. And so I didn't really know anything, I'm sure. So I went down there, and I was down in Miami, and it was the fall, last weekend of October 2008. And so here I am, a white dude who has basically lived all of his life in ministry. My dad's a pastor, with kind of an idea that white was right. And kind of this idea that I thought I had a good handle on my politics, on my theology, on my perspective, and all of those things. And I remember going down and in this convention center, and it was really the first, what I would say, kind of conference that I went to that was predominantly led on stage by people of color. And I'd always gone to conferences that looked like me, right? And so I'd already spent 4 hours in a breakout session going through the 8 essentials of CCDA, and that kind of rocked my world. And I realized, wow, this is an incredible association of people who've basically put the under-resourced, the marginalized, the dismissed at the center of their concern. And so I'm sitting there, and Dr. John Perkins, like the OG of just like an amazing man that I'd never heard of. I'm in my mid-40s. I'd never heard of Dr. John Perkins. And he gets up and he makes this statement. He goes, I can't believe, he was 80 years old at the time. He said, I can't believe I'm getting ready to possibly see a black man walk into the Oval Office and sit down behind the president's desk to lead, not to serve. And the place erupted. And I looked around and I was so disturbed, because in my mind, and I just have to set this up, in my mind, I thought this was a Christian conference. And I had never seen or heard, like, I know these people are Christian. I know that they're like Dr. John Perkins. And all of a sudden I realized there was a whole room of Christian Democrats. And I didn't know there was such a thing. If you can imagine.
Wow.
And it was an epiphany. It was an aha moment. It was like, like, oh my gosh, they're cheering. They're actually like this, like President Obama next week was getting ready, and they were celebrating it. And it was one of those things. I sat there, I'm like, I know these are God-loving people. There might be something else I need to learn about this. That's what set up this journey. So I can't really answer today's stuff without kind of going back there, realizing.
And thank you for that.
This is like, I don't want to pretend. Like, this is who I've been. This is where I've gone to this journey. And so I've done a lot of reading, and one of my mentors, Noel Castellanos, said, hey, listen, if you're going to try to lead people of color, if you think that that's going to happen, then you need to put yourself under people of color. And he said, what was the last 10 books you read?
That's good.
And I said, well, I don't mean what was the title, who wrote them, right? So what was the color of the authors of the last 10 books you read?
Wow.
Well, I didn't have to think white. He goes, so you don't have anybody you're reading? And I said, well, can you give me some suggestions? And he started giving me Latinx authors, theologians, Latino and African American, and Korean, and I'm like, oh, I got some learning to do. So in that beginning of that journey, I thank God for Noel and him kind of taking me under his wing. And so those are the things that have kind of brought me to this place. And so now, as I step into on our stage and we talk about these things, my perspective is what Jesus prayed for in John chapter 17. He prayed that there would be unity because he gave his life for unity. So we don't have to create unity. We have to make sure that the unity that Christ gave us on the cross is actually what we see today, heaven
Yeah.
on earth, right?
Right.
And so that's kind of our journey, and that's what we're talking about, because actually Jamar Tisby wrote in his book that quote that Dr. Martin Luther King was actually a quote from a black pastor in the late 1800s. And what was true in the 1800s was true in the 60s, and it's true today in 2020. Less than 4% of all churches in America are multi-ethnic. 96% of all churches in America are monoethnic. White, brown, black, whatever that is, right? And you go, man, if Jesus was praying for it and he describes it in Revelation, then we got some work to do.
Yeah.
So is it comfort or is it ignorance that we are so segregated? And I want you to chime in on this too, but is it comfort or is it ignorance on the church's part? Because it's still prevalent.
It is.
So which one is it?
I wouldn't say it's necessary. It could be some level of comfort. And I think there is some level of ignorance or uneducated. All I can't answer for everybody. I can just answer for me.
Right.
But I often say this. I said, after doing a little bit of homework, right? And I would just say, we just had this conversation at church Sunday a little bit, and it wasn't really the main topic. It's just like, hey, as a white male, the most privileged of beings in America, right? I got to do some work of maybe decentering some of my whiteness and understanding that there is a greater perspective and understanding of what I was taught growing up and all of that. And so what I would say is that a lot of the issue of what we see today sits on the shoulders of white-led churches in America since our existence, since we started.
I want you to chime in. So what do you see? Because obviously your church talks about it.
Absolutely. I believe it's ignorance turned comfort. Kind of morphed. It's ignorance, and then the more you lay there, you just get comfortable, and there's no need to change. You know what I mean? And then you're surrounded by people who are either ignorant or comfortable. So you're in like company. I believe that. And I was sitting here trying not to get emotional as BC was talking, because to me, deliverance is the most beautiful thing in the world. When God can come into everything that man has taught us and change that and shift that and chop that and mince that and kill that and say, no, this is the love that I have, and this is the vision I want to give you. There's just nothing more beautiful. So when it comes to the question was, is it ignorance or is it comfort? I think it's a combination of the two. I think they come together. But I think the vast majority of us are ignorant. I don't think we care enough to pay attention to change. It's like my way is right because this is what I've been taught.
Right.
And everything you've
That's
been
what you
taught
know.
has to be wrong.
Yep.
Yep. So that's what I think it is.
No.
Yeah. So how do we address that, Pastor? How do you address it in your church?
Well, so just to kind of understand kind of the makeup of our church at this point, we're about 45% African American, we're about 30% Caucasian, and about 25% Latinx, and then just kind of a smattering of different things, right? And so it as the gospel, there is no, if I love the quote, if the gospel of Jesus isn't good news to everyone, then it's not the good news of Jesus Christ, right? So it's got to be good news to everyone, not just some, right? And so just the gospel, we have to begin to. I used to think that the Apostle Paul grew up in Kansas City, right? Because the perspective that was taught to me was a Midwest value. He was a good, patriotic American. He loved Jesus. He loved America. That was the Apostle Paul. And it wasn't until later in my life I realized that Paul was a Middle Eastern maybe dark skin.
Paul look like me.
Like, yeah. And everything that the Apostle Paul wrote about came from being in a position of being a Jew who was in a dominated culture, all of these things. And it changes the perspective of the gospel.
That'll mess up someone's perspective right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
When you think of a broader sense of that. And so, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. We got to take a break, but we're coming back because
yeah.
we have to finish talking about
All
this.
right.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you stay with us. We'll be right back.
Ever since I made my first beat, I knew music was a passion. Along with the beat makers in my company, I get to share my passion. Music is a way to dream, and now I get a chance to make dreams come true. Welcome to Soundmaster Beats.
Restore your body, beauty, and soul with Capriceology.com, providing wellness and ministry services for your church and family with master herbalist, iridologist, and conference speaker Caprice Butts. Are you as healthy as you want to be? Nutritional help is just a click away with online wellness packages and consultations. Or grab your friends and book a wellness workshop for your church group. Plus, get daily inspiration to revive you from the inside out. Restore your body, beauty, and soul with Capriceology.com. Subscribe today for a free wellness guide.
Welcome back to the Mercedes Wilson Show. I have Pastor B and Elder Kimera still here with me. Pastor, first of all, I want to say thank you for your transparency because you don't hear that. You don't hear folks, saying, listen, this is the perspective I came from, so God is still working on me too. But can we talk about the climate? Because you have, like you said, you were in a room full of African-American Democrats. Can we talk about, without getting into the politics and who's right and who's wrong, but the climate of it is undeniable. How do you deal with that? How does the church deal with that today? Because it's Democrat, Republican, it's right or wrong right now. Everybody's just, so how are you addressing that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I don't know that I'm doing it well. All I know is that that it's not a topic that we can dismiss. And we've been talking about being proactive. Like this year, 2020, is being set up to be one of the most toxic years in memory of the United States. And I think, and I think a lot of it has to do. And I think we're going to be held accountable. The church, the Big C Church of America, is going to be held accountable on what we do this year and how we handle the politics. Are we going to continue to elevate the politics of whatever side we're on above the call of Jesus Christ?
Yeah.
And so I'm actually a triple citizen. First of all, I'm a citizen of the kingdom of heaven, and that's my greatest allegiance right there. I'm a citizen of the United States, right? And then I'm also a dual citizen of citizen nation Potawatomi. So my mom's side is Native American. My dad's side has some Native American. Both sides of my family walked some type of trail of tears or trail of death. But we never really associated with that part of our culture, right? But that is in our history.
Yeah.
And so what I'm having to realize is that if we are trying to prove our rightness, our correctness in whichever side we're in, then we're going to get ourselves in trouble.
And that's exactly what we're trying to do right now.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's happening.
And if anybody could have pulled the correct card, it was Jesus Christ.
Right.
Christ, right? God put on flesh, moved into the hood of humanity, found the most marginalized teenage girl he could find as a Jew, a Galilean teenage girl. And that's where he had his coming out party. And he told all of these shepherds, which in tradition are young men, but actually shepherds back in the day, if you do a little research, might have been middle school girls, right? That's actually part of the shepherds, dark-skinned, middle-aged, right? That's where Jesus identified himself, right? And so now all of a sudden, Jesus comes and he lives, and then one of the things that he just simply says is that in that prayer, he says, you got to love each other as I have loved you. So now all of a sudden, it's not about our politics. It's not about our right or wrong, because if anybody could have pulled the right card, it would have been Jesus.
Yeah.
You're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, I'm right. But Jesus didn't come to prove his rightness. He came to connect with us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so if we will begin, I think, just simply to have a posture. And I say this to my white brothers and sisters, like, we need to have a posture of being a student, not a critic.
Yeah.
And so I think our posture, our tone really has to set forth, like, it's all in God's hands, right? And so are we going to pray against God's direction on our nation? Are we going to elevate our politics over what God wants? So we have to be, in God we trust is in our dollar bills. So is that just something on a bill, or is that going to be in our heart?
Right.
So that's not just in God we trust in our money, it's in everything that we do.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the posture, at least that I'm trying to say, hey, listen,
Yeah.
we need to be involved, we need to be engaged, but let's not elevate our politics above our love for each other.
Right. And then I would love to hear some of your ideas on how we do that. How do we show love?
Well, first, I think we can't hide from the truth. We have to have these conversations more often.
Right.
You know what I mean? We have to put that out there. Hey, this is what we're dealing with. This is the truth, so that we're not ignorant, so that we know, so that we can change and we can fix things. But then, you know, I think the other route to changing all of this and just kind of implementing the love of God above anything else is having conversations with people that don't look like you. I have to, he has so much insight that I have no clue about because he's sat in different rooms.
Yeah.
But if you know what I mean? But if
That's
I never
true.
sit and talk to him, I never know. And so, and he has to sit and talk to me, and then he'll be able to understand me as well. And so when we sit because what happens is when we sit across from people who don't look like us, we definitely see our differences, but we also see how much we're alike.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
then those are the things that can make us really love and want to connect. And then that opens the door for love and fellowship and connectivity and unity and all of that stuff. But as
Yep.
long as we stay separate,
Yeah.
nothing will ever change.
Yep. And Pastor, you said something that I want you to speak to the church on when you talked about 2020 is one of the most important years, and I'm paraphrasing, so correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the most instrumental years for the church. What we do this year. Can you speak to the church? I want you to look into that camera and speak to the church and say what 2020 needs to look like for us.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would just simply say that that for us adults and for us as the church, we have a generation that's coming behind us and looking at us. And if we don't get this right, then we're going to give, I think, my kids, I got a 23-year-old, a 20-year-old, and a 16-year-old. And all of their friends and this generation, we're going to give them every excuse to not follow Jesus. And I think how we respond and how we treat each other during this cannot continue to grow toxic. It needs to grow in love. And so there's so much depending on us to get this right as the adults in the room. Let's love as Christ loved us, right? And extend the grace that he extended to us. Let's extend it to each other, no matter what side of the aisle it is.
That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything you want to say?
What do I want to say? Find new friends. Understand that just because, you know, we're all different shades doesn't mean we don't all bleed the same blood. And it's that connectivity that will open up the door to you to understand love and how to be that in the form of Christ. So yeah, that's all I have. That's all I got.
And then, Pastor, is there one last question? Because you have a church that is multicultural, is it okay, or how do you celebrate? Like, how do you celebrate being an African American woman without offending those around you? Like, because you know how some people can say, well, wait a minute, you think that you're superior. No, how do you celebrate where you're from, your history, without offending someone else next to you in a multicultural church? Because it can easily turn into, well, wait a minute, you're not better than me. How do we celebrate who we are, but at the same time fellowship?
I think, our worship team, we have black, white, brown. Right? And so we're together all the time. And so that's something that we all have to be, well, starting out, we all had to be kind of conscious of, because you have to learn each other.
Right.
Right? And so what you do is you kind of just, you just move very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very cautiously on things that you know can be kind of offensive. But at the same time, you have to be yourself. You have to be yourself, but you have to be yourself through love. You know what I mean? Like, let me see. What's an example I can give?
That's the key.
You got to be yourself through love. I'll say for me, because all I know is play. I like to joke a lot. I use a lot of my humor. Yes, I do.
Elder.
I use a lot of my humor to make people who I saw were a little uncomfortable around me comfortable. Hey, you can call me, hey, girlfriend. It's okay. I won't get offended. You know, and it opens the door for them to feel like, oh, okay. You can see the edge get taken off. Like, yeah, I'm just like you.
Yeah.
I promise. I'm not mean. I'm not angry. I'm not mad. I'm not bitter.
Yeah.
You know, it's those kind of things. You have to be yourself, and just be cautious of the person next to you and understand that they have to be themselves, and you have to have that mutual respect.
That's good. That's good. Thank y'all for coming.
Yeah.
Pastor, you look like there was something you wanted to say.
Yeah.
I just simply say what we've tried to do is realize is that in a multi-ethnic, multicultural community of faith, nobody gets to live in their sweet spot. But we will try to visit everybody's neighborhood.
That's good.
Right? And
That's
so
really good.
that's why we bring in different communicators. That's why we have different kinds of music and song, and so that at some point, if you're white, brown, black, if you're old, if you're younger, like we're going to bring hip hop in, and we're going to do all of those things. We're going to try to visit everybody's neighborhood,
That's
so you
good.
can kind of lean in.
Visit everybody's neighborhood.
Absolutely.
That is so good. Thank y'all for coming.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you so
us.
much. And we'll be right back with the Mercedes moment.
Wardrobe for the Mercedes Wilson Show was provided by Clothes Mentor in Tonawanda, New York. Grade A looks for less.
Peter had an experience. In Acts 10, God had a talk with Peter. He showed him a vision. And the Bible says in verse 11, a vessel descending unto him as it had been a great sheet knit at the four corners and let down on the earth. All manners of four-footed beasts of the earth and wild beasts and creeping things and fowls of the air. A voice said to him, rise, Peter, kill and eat. Peter replied, no, Lord, I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean. The voice replied, what God has cleansed, don't call it unclean. This was done 3 times. Later in the chapter, when he relays this message to Cornelius as God instructed him, Peter says in verse 34, of a truth I perceive that God is no respecter of persons, but in every nation he that feareth him and is worth righteousness is accepted by him. God is no respecter of persons. He looks at the heart. Racism is never okay for anyone that is claiming to be a Christian. The blood covers and saves all of us. If you think otherwise, then you are reading a different Bible than me. God sent his disciples to preach to the world, and we are his disciples. Racism has no place in the church. Thank you for allowing me in your homes today, and I pray that God blesses everything that you hold dear to your hearts. Learn more about this show, fill out forms to be a guest, and give us your show ideas, all at MercedesEWilson.com. Also, follow me on all of my social media handles at Mercedes E. Wilson, and don't forget to check out all of the shows via YouTube and my podcast. Share this show with someone you love, and thank you for tuning into the Mercedes Wilson Show.
You're amazing. There'll never be another like you. Never be another like you. Captivating and sharing the things that really matter to you. Really matter to you. When the weight of the world gets too heavy, take a ride with Mercedes. Be in the know.